and a little more than a month out from the Pegasus World Cup, looking at some of those shots in the Open, many shots, in fact, of Tiz the Law winning both the Holy Bull and the Curlin Florida Derby, as we gaze out at a live shot little after 11 a.m. on this third Saturday of the meet. Hard to argue, in fact, impossible. It would be futile to argue with the weatherman today because it couldn't be a nicer afternoon for thoroughbred racing here at beautiful Gulfstream Park. And Jason Blewett, Acacia Courtney, glad to have you with us, everybody, as we catch up from our respective studios. The weather, Acacia, is a perfect 10 out of 10 today, and this card, I think, follow suit. It's a great day of racing down here.
It does, especially the second half of the card. And in case you hadn't heard already, it is a mandatory payout of the Rainbow Six, which does kick off in race number 6. We'll talk more about it later. But looking forward to the 2 stakes on tap, Jason. Of course, the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector, which is laden with Grade 1 caliber horses and a big field. And then the Via Borghese for the girls going long on turf.
And that's got everybody in it, from Todd Pletcher to Christophe Comont to Chad Brown. Just both stakes today are loaded fields. And that is not hyperbole whatsoever. Nor is the fact that the Stronach 5 yesterday afternoon paid out and was a fairly formful sequence. But once again, I think in looking at the winning combinations and looking at the winning mutuals in the far right column there with the $2 win payoffs, you know, it goes back to that 12% takeout and the Stronach 5 just paying well over the parlay each and every Friday.
At $838 play is our all-star payout, I should say, is the all-star ticket hit. Congratulations to our Naomi Tucker at Laurel and Ron Nicoletti at Gulfstream. Nicely done, guys. 108, and they got 8 times their money back there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, turn that into an 8-to-1 proposition and had action over 5 consecutive races, which I'm a fan of, and a great job, as you were saying, by both Ronnie and Naomi taking it down for over $800. A nice Christmas present and holiday present here on this December 19th weekend. We move ahead. Although Ronnie did a great job in yesterday's Stronach 5, he did well in the pick box. I think he walked away with 3 winners yesterday and had a couple of narrow photo losses, but we do have to congratulate not Ron Nicoletti, but 3 winners of the Beat the Expert contest who are all getting that cool Beat the Expert Gulfstream polo.
Joe, Franklin, and Mike, congratulations. You beat the Expert, and big thank you to everybody that played yesterday. Beat the Expert will be back next Friday, and I'm in the hot seat.
You definitely are. I would imagine that'll be a 10-race Friday card. Actually, isn't Friday Christmas Day?
Friday's Christmas. You're absolutely right.
Right. So
we Friday after
that. Yeah, or maybe, maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll do it on Thursday. Maybe a little Christmas Eve showdown and Beat the Expert. Yeah, we can tweak that a little bit.
Hard to believe 1 week out from Christmas already.
It is bananas. And again, a good time to bring it up because some people have asked me online. We are running here on Christmas Eve, so there will be a live racing card December 24th. Just take note of that. We'll move forward, Acacia, on a fast and firm Saturday program. And speaking of you being in the hot seat, what are we doing in this early pick 5?
Well, we'll kick things off. I had a tough time with this early sequence. It's currently the number 5. Call Bros is 2-1, and I think is the one to beat, though he's a little bit difficult to kind of lean on in the opening leg, given the fact that he's coming out of 2 in the money finishes at a comparable level at Gulfstream Park West. So I'll have a couple more to back myself up in the opener using the 2 most logical ones, Ms. Big Spring on the drop and Say Adios in race number 2. 2 deep with Cobb now moving to the barn of Jorge Delgado, and then you've got X-Top who picks up Luis Saez. Those look to be logical to me. I'm 3 deep in race number 4, which is on the turf, and then closing things out in race 5 with the sequence include the Beats. Very impressive first out win for Dave Fox. We'll see if she can make it 2 in a row.
Absolutely, and in fact, kind of a neat little sidebar nugget regarding Include the Beast and the Dave Fox filly in Miss Big Spring in the second who you included. They are full sisters, both running in the span of about an hour and a half, 2 hours, give or take. I like stuff like that. It doesn't happen often, and I think both horses are going to run well, as is the case, as far as my opinion goes, with the 5 Call Bros in the first, who's going to be favorite. You and I both taking Joe Orsino and Paco with a horse who, when it comes down to it, just, I think, has the best-looking recent turf form in the field.
I think so, too. And watching that race back at Gulfstream Park West, I had noticed he was pretty antsy in the gate. So I like that this will be the 3rd time that Paco Lopez is riding him, just kind of having that consistency was a little bit keen to kind of do more, and had kind of 3 horses coming down to the wire, which included Scotch Whiskey, who's out of this race. But I thought it was a pretty game performance off of that. Should be the one to beat. I'll use it with the 9 Big Perm, who ran the best number last time out. Just kind of, where did that race come from, so to speak?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, a big price that day, almost 15-1 for trainer Ken Sweezy. Was that a legit effort or one of those sort of outliers? We're going to find out a bit more about that gelding. My price horse in the first would be the 6, Realtor Danny D. I tend to like Steve Dwoskin's horses, second or third off a layoff, second, third time starters, and so on. And I'm hoping he's a colt that can move forward. And I think in hindsight, caught some live fields led by Dominate the Moment on the turf here last winter before that lengthy layoff. We'll get on to the second, and there are 5 individual main track races altogether on this Saturday card, and race 2 is the first as we go to this 3 lifetime, 3-and-up filly mare, 6250 claimer, and you and I just taking the same 4 horses, but boxing up, I would imagine, the 2 favorites here between the 3 Miss Big Spring, who's in for the 6250 with the speed for Dave Fox, and right next door, the 4 Say Adios, who's got speed as well, and it's been, for the most part, been pretty sharp of late for Bob Hess Jr.
And the reason I gave the slight nod to Say Adios is that, A, she's not a need-the-lead type, and certainly would expect Miss Big Spring to be kind of leading them out of the starting gate. Overall, I think Say Adios has just been more consistent. Miss Big Spring has run some good races. It's just that race 2 starts back was so bad after showing early speed and had some solid races sprinkled in before that. So it could just be a case where Miss Big Spring runs away from them. I'm hoping that Say Adioso is just one who can have a little bit more stamina when they come down to the wire.
Now, 2 straight dirt races early on in this opening pick 5 as we bounce over to Saturday's third, a $16,000 2-year-old maiden claimer, led by 2 inside posted Georgie Delgado trained horses. Most importantly, out of Georgie's 2, or his pair, happens to be the number 2 Cobb. This is the first horse that I've seen Arundel Farm with Jorge Delgado trading, and I like seeing that. I like both outfits a lot, and I think Jorge is not only a great guy but an excellent horseman. And it just, to me, looks like go time beginning with Cobb as that horse drops in for $16,000 and gets a Rod Ortiz Jr., but has a worthy foe in the 4 X-Top who you picked, who's just run fine for Rohan Crichton.
And Delgado D does have several Arundel horses in his care throughout the next couple of days, so he looks like has been taking over some of the runners from their stable.
It's a good move for Arundel.
For sure. As it's a barn, as we've been talking about recently, who has been picking up a lot of steam and has been doing very well. So taking a drop in class, this one's very live with a Rad Ortiz. I don't love that X-Top was beaten by a big price in Kuete last time out, but overall, this one I thought picking up Luis Saez just have a little bit more speed too, and overall the last couple of races were good.
And at least that Cuate or Cuate for Antonio Sano came back, didn't run outstandingly well, but was third in the Uncle Pip race against winners here this past Wednesday. So that horse, although he paid almost $85 in the upset win against X-Top, maybe he's a little better than first blush would have suggested. And yeah, we'll see how those horses do in the third. Nothing like a 12-horse field, though, as we turn the page on the turf and we move on to this 2-year-old $25,000 to $20,000 maiden claimer, led by, 4 horses that you and I boxed up, mid-pack to the outside from the 6 Happy Champ, who's back on his preferred surface, down in class as my top pick for Jack Sisterson. Todd Pletcher's second-time starter, the 7 Houdini's Awesome, is going to take money, special weight to maiden 25, and I'm glad you're taking a shot here with Victor Barboza's horse in the 10 Confucio, who, as far as turf pedigree goes, this one's dam was really good. I remember her running years ago for John Bregman in New York.
The dam and the offspring, too, of her. The whole family's been
is it
good
I think Icebox is in the family, too, right?
Icebox is the half-brother who was the Florida Derby winner, never ran on the turf. But then there was Ice It, who was a multiple stakes winner and a good turf runner who actually ended up being a good steeplechase horse. 4 siblings, 1 on grass, and then the mare, as you mentioned, a grade 2 winner and good on turf. I don't love that Victor Barboza's 0 for the meet meet so far and has had a few short price horses. That's something that I think is a negative, but at a big price in this spot where I just had some questions about some of the other ones that we're going to take some money. I'm hoping Miguel Vasquez, who's continued to ride in good form throughout the start of the meet, can help us out here with a little bit of a price. Says Happy Champ and Houdini's awesome on the drops in class, obviously make a lot of sense.
No doubt. I was going to ask you, do you think Happy Champ, when it comes down to it, is just simply the one they've got to get around? How well, in context of this field, how solid those two turf races look in Kentucky?
I think you hit the nail on the head in context of this field, because the two turf races were just okay, but I like that he showed some more speed going a distance of ground in that Churchill race, and as we always say, it's tough to gauge on some of those Kentucky Downs races, especially going the 6.5 furlongs. Houdini's awesome, just didn't run a step, but for what it's worth, I do think it actually was a very solid maiden race that he faced in New York that day. So again, drop in class is key, but I think both of them would need to run their best race yet.
And a 2-win Friday. No surprise there for Mr. Trainer Todd Pletcher. Yep. The horse that Todd was running that I thought could not lose, a Noble Empire, I think beat one at 2-5 or so in the 7th race. It's a tough game. Let's move on to the 5th here. We've got 2-year-old fillies in this $20,000 to $16,000 claimer on the dirt, going 6 furlongs, and a decent race. I feel like the two biggest pre-race keys or nuggets happen to belong to one horse by herself. In the 8 include the Beast, and we'll talk more about her in a second. The other sort of interesting element of this race on paper is, do the 3, Texas Reward, and the 4, She's Classy, do they potentially hook up and basically, to an extent, take each other out of the race, or at least adversely affect one another on the engine?
Well, that could be, and that would actually be good news for Include the Beast as we backtrack to her debut and first out win at Gulfstream Park West. She really had a great trip this day. Stalking under Sammy Camacho, pulled away, and was just much best. And she just seems to really stand out on paper, and you did have the one-horse Bolt there as the rider lost his irons.
That was Pink Fizz, who came back and kept the irons and won like a week and a half later after this race. But no, this was a very good effort for Dave Fox filly, who was just on the engine and pretty sharp throughout.
Yes, she ran a good race, so she has to come back and do it again. That said, I think she meets the right field to do it today. I didn't really see any monsters in here where she'd really have to run much better than she did in her debut.
And you've also got a Bard. I get she won first out, but I think most of us, or at least a good chunk of us, I know Ronnie feels the same because we're down here year-round. We really like Dave Fox with second-time starters, and it's about the long game for him and not just one race, even on a claiming scale like this. So you're going to go 8-6 in this spot. Greenwood Drive is a trainer change in from New York for Elizabeth Dobles.
And it was a similar kind of trainer change from Jeremiah Englehart to Elizabeth Dobles yesterday, which really did not work out too well. So we'll see if this one can be stronger, as she did win first time out of Finger Lakes.
Absolutely. That horse, a crack shot, just didn't break, didn't get off all that alertly, and that was pretty much the end of that one's race as a clear favorite. But Elizabeth, a good trainer, and we'll take a little breather here as we chase a mandatory multi-million-dollar payout this afternoon, or at least pool in today's Rainbow Six.
In the 2-path. Ground off her inside. Race. A quarter of a mile to go, and he's 6 yards out. It's last of the 12 as they roll into the backstretch.
And if you haven't signed up for a first bet wagering account, what are you waiting for? This would be a good time to do it with our winter meet here, Acacia, in full swing as we welcome everybody back to Gulfstream Park today. And the timing's good if you want to bang out that promo code Sport of Kings with the big mandatory in today's Rainbow Six.
No better time than the present. Head on over to First Bet, get the app downloaded, and get ready to fire as it is a mandatory payout today. The pools continue to grow over the last few days, Jason, and it is not an easy sequence. Very, very competitive 6 races throughout the card today.
And you get the 2 stakes, but both of them are far from layups. I mean, there is not a, like, quote-unquote, traditional single per se. I mean, you're just not dealing with a series of races that has a single horse, even money or shorter. So, yeah, good luck if you're playing, and we hope that's the case. Again, it's a fairly low-risk but high-reward type investment with the 20-cent base play. It all starts in race number 6, and I'm curious, Acacia. You know, Ronnie and I talked about our respective Rainbow Six plays yesterday. You and I have not, so this is the first time I'm going to see your ticket, and I'm wondering how much you went for here.
I went for a $72 play as my tactic was to kind of hope and pray throughout the first 3 legs, as I feel like I might be a little bit light, but I really wanted some coverage later on. 3 horses in both of the stakes, and then I used 5 in that maiden race to cash things out, which I think is very wide open. Conforto is the one to beat. I like Super High Voltage, has the speed in the first leg. I'm 2 deep. Pago Querido coming off of that nice win at Laurel last time out, and I did like Doll Collection, of course, who's out of race 7, so I'll use Jerry B protectively in there. 2 deep with Grays Creek, who's the one to beat off the layoff, and the speed of Kingmeister for Shug McGahee. The Via Borghese is the 9th race. I'm 3 deep in there. 3 deep in the Mr. Prospector as well. I did not include Mind Control, who was the 4th pick, as he has to overcome that outside post, but I do think he's going to run a lot better today, and we'll talk more about that race later. And then 5 deep in that maiden special weight on the turf, as I like some prices. I have some questions about a few of the favorites, but wanting definitely to have coverage in that last leg.
Oh, that last race is nuts. Yeah. And, you know, your typical winter time, soon to be, 2, about to turn 3, maiden special weight on the turf, and the usual suspects are very much involved and in play in today's 11th race. I used 4 to close out my Rainbow Six, and I went for a little more than you, $115 and 20 cents. And working from the back forward, again, I've got wiggle room and certainly some breathing room if I can make it that far in the nightcap. I opted to go with Firenze Fire and Diamond Oops as the 2 favorites in the 10th. Now, the Via Borghese sees me using Chad Brown on the outside, Todd Pletcher's always shopping, and, of course, Traipsing, who seemed to get good and like this turf course late last winter for Christoph Kaman. 8th race, I've only got 2 in that spot, and I'm going to need, luck in general, but that 8th race, I might be a little light just using the 1 Grays Creek, hoping that he is still very much an unfinished product, and we see the best race out of him yet. And I think the 7 Grand Journey, who's kind of walked the walk, is in a good spot for Mike Maker as he's down in class. 7th race confused me. I just found a pretty even field and an interesting puzzle, and I'm 5, 9, and 10 to start this thing out on the turf using 3 Mikes. I got the 2 Mike Maker trained horses and the Mike Trombetta horses. I was going to say the first name Mike seems to be fairly ubiquitous Acacia in this opening leg. And, outside, again, you've got Conforto in from New York for Mike Maker, getting a rod in for the 20 as our top pick. I know you're a huge Mike Trombetta fan, and he's right next door with a very dangerous speed horse in the 9, Super High Voltage.
And it's only raced on turf once, that gelding by Brilliant Speed, and is a Florida bred, actually. So glad to see this one back staying in Florida after the race came off the grass last time. And I know that his only win did come on the synthetic at Presque Isle, but the turf race was against Tougher and had trouble that day at Monmouth. So I'm willing to give this one a bit more of a try, as he's been showing a lot more speed lately, which I like. Conforto makes a lot of sense on the drop in class, though unfortunately just hasn't seen the winner's circle in a while.
And that, I think, is the real linchpin, or at least undercurrent issue with him. His form, you would like to presume against better and better fields and superior fields, it's been a little wishy-washy, and that is the I think the glaring issue with Conforto. But the maker rod factor, I guess for me, won out in the end is my top pick. The Trombetta horse, Dangerous, and I do think the Mike Maker train number 5, Dylan Rocks, can run. He's got some early speed, and he's just coming this afternoon, getting Tyler Gaffalione from a far better post. He was really up against it in a race he was probably overbet anyway last time out at Gulfstream Park West. 7th is very interesting. Let's volley back over to the main track. And, I mean, you just don't have, like, I think a clear horse to beat in this upcoming allowance race. And, it feels like a good chunk of this field, you're either dealing with horses that have run some big races in the past and have been a little maybe iffy and a little bit inconsistent since then, and then you've got horses like the 2 shippers on the outside and Jerry B, and your top selection for Mike Stidham, who do seem to be trending upward in this spot, and 2 horses that are probably headed in the right direction.
Yeah, Pago Querido, as we'll take a look at her maiden win at Laurel, and the name basically translates like to pay dearly, which at $235,000, I can see where the name came from. I'm guessing that's what it is. But I think that this was a key in that she got to go the 7 furlongs, and she was a big price as she had been so well beaten at Saratoga, but she had to be dueling with the likes of Thankful, who was so impressive that day and would go on to run in the Breeders' Cup for Todd Pletcher. So I'm willing to be forgiving of that. I thought that this was a game performance, as she was actually pretty keen from the inside to do more from that one post and held on pretty well in that long stretch to win at the 7/8.
And next to her, the 7, Jerry B, who we both have highly rated, in fact, capping our respective exactas. Out-of-town form in Kentucky has been fine for Kelsey Danner, and I would imagine she just shows up as a filly who's been sharp and has good recent form and is a major player.
And I like that she's turning back in distance, too. She won going 7 furlongs first time out. Never an easy task. She tried a mile last time where she ran fine, and certainly turning back to the 3/4, she should be fit enough. That should be no problem coming back here.
Want to pop the inside horse quickly in Halawala, who's now J.C. Avila, coming in off a trader change and yet another layoff. And, I mean, once upon a time, mainly zeroing in on her first 2 starts. I mean, it looked like she was cut out from a speed figure standpoint and overall just quality and performance standpoint. It looked like she could be okay.
And what a pedigree on her, too. I mean, you'd certainly think, as she's out of Merrifield, she won the Ballerina, a bunch of top quality stakes. And
Doug O'Neill, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And she banked over $1 million on the track, but unfortunately this one, I guess the wheels fell off somewhere as her gaps between her last couple of races and now a trainer change. So we'll see how Juan Avila does with her. She's got the ability. We'll see if they can recapture it.
And speaking of trying to recapture, the 5 Sonar is a filly I have chased. Naturally, I missed the day off the layoff back in July when she won and paid about $40. And a race I thought was legitimate and strong and solid, and I've been chasing her since. Lost at 6-5, 9-2, and 5-2. Couple of things with her. I like Juan Alvarado, the trainer, like recalibrating today and taking a step back, and she's been laid up about 2.5 months. I view that as a just the right move with her because her form was going this way. The other is, I think, a mile 3 back probably too far, sloppy track 2 back. She didn't like that, and maybe she just was tailing off in a combination of not liking the main track at Gulfstream Park West. This is it for me, and, we could go on a whole other dissertation. When do you finally say you've been wrong and stop chasing and going back to a horse who you keep falling into the same trap with? But I'm going to give Sonar one more chance today in the 7th race.
Well, as soon as you sign the divorce papers, Jason, she's going to win.
And
so
I'll let everybody know that I'm off so
happen.
everybody else can be on her. But I do think Sonar's got a right to run pretty well in that very, very tricky 7th race. On the turf for the 8th, and as we move later and further on into this mandatory Rainbow Six, my bread anyway is buttered with 2 real turf titans and powerhouses, with the 1 Grays Creek and the number 7 Grand Journey. Grays Creek is probably, given the Chad Brown factor and the fact that this colt by Pioneer of the Nile costs so much money, he's probably the most important horse because, and I'm curious your take as we backtrack to a recent race of his on July 8th at Keeneland, it does seem like Grays Creek was finally starting to get a hang of things before this recent 5-month layoff.
Yeah, the 2 races in Kentucky that he won, particularly the maiden win at Churchill, I thought thought were really impressive. Last time out, again, closing in between horses. You can see him there in the red colors of Larry Best OXO stable. This horse has a very strong turn of foot. Of course, the question is, where has he been since this win in July, as he was in very good form on the turf at that time, missed any sort of turf stakes he might have taken a stab at, and does come back here, and we're glad to see him back here, but will be closing off of it. I think he's got a world of talent. Looks like he's a little bit tricky to keep on the racetrack, as this is his second layoff or major layoff line. I took a speed horse with King Meister. I know he's a little bit of a shot in the dark, as he did run third in his only turf race. And that was Don Juan Kitten had gotten just so good throughout the summer for Danny Gargan. I've actually always preferred the look of this horse on the turf, and the dam was good on the grass. Of course, he's the brother to Strike Power, so we'll see how he does back to the grass today.
And he's got speed, like you said, a pace play alongside, I would imagine, the Johnny V. And welcome back to Gulfstream Park to John Velasquez. Great seeing his name in the entries. He's riding for Hall of Famer Roger Atfield on the 9, Inventing Blame, was pretty quick. I'm going to try to wake up, and I say wake up, that's probably a little over the top, but I'm going to give the 7 Grand Journey a look in this race as my top pick. We know he's got a lot of back class and has done his best running right here at Gulfstream, and I would imagine this has been a claim that hasn't totally panned out for Mike Maker and Paradise Farms Corp, considering they paid over $60K for him in June, and he's only run the 2 times. But he didn't run all that bad in that Indiana Stake, and soft turf going 12 furlongs at Kentucky Downs. I don't care about that race against Arklow. I will say this is not an outfit, and they claim a lot, and some claims are good, others maybe not so good. They are not afraid to drop horses down well below what they paid for them. So the fact that Maker is still confident this horse can run for the 62.5, that wasn't lost on me in that 8th race. Let's move on to the 9th here, the Via Borghese, a mile and 3/16 on the turf. Very solid field, and I don't feel like I'm out of line. Acacia, I know we're pro Gulfstream and all that and love the game, but this is a legit grade 3, grade 2.5 type stake. This is a good field.
I agree. You've got several horses. I mean, you've got Court Return, who comes out of a neck defeat in grade 1 company up in Canada, and the E.P. Taylor behind Etoile. This is a very quality field. Some horses who are either stepping up in company, where it could be the case of Great Island on the outside, or some horses that are graded quality.
Definitely, and Traipsing has given the look at potentially being graded quality for trainer Christophe Coman. We saw her win the opening race here, in fact, on the Florida Derby undercard last March 28th in front of empty stands, which I think all of us were still very much acclimating to, and it was Florida Derby day, so it was a little eerie looking back, but she was 20-1 that afternoon, and not that she ran a dozen times over the summer and fall, but I think she has shown she's got quality, in that win here last March wasn't a fluke. Her races up north were good.
And it's funny because she won that race off the layoff, coming from way off of it. In her recent races, she's been showing speed. And as we take a look at the Long Island, where she was beaten by her stablemate in Mutamakina, who had the class edge and coming out of a troubled trip. But Traipsing got really comfortable on the front end. They went 26.52 for the fractions there. And Kendra Carmouche really just got her so relaxed. And I think that's where she's found her best running style to be, is setting the pace, and much improved. I see her as the lone speed in here. We'll see if Always Shopping tries to keep her company on the front end, but it looks like she's just kind of on that upward trajectory.
And I'm hoping Always Shopping, who seems to have just found a new career and has written briefly but solidly a new chapter with the switch to turf. I've been following her naturally since her 2-year-old season on the dirt, and although she had won the Gazelle, her majority of her dirt races just weren't all that good, in 2019 and certainly into 2020, but it just seems like turf has brought out new life of her, and she was involved in that really exciting race in the Dowager against Graham Ocean's filly and Blaine Debbie. We got to mention the 9 Great Island for Chad Brown and Tyler, who does remind me a little bit of Magic Star, who won the Marshuas River here last January, who did not have, had only, I think, run a couple of times, and Chad saw fit right up in the stakes competition. I get a little bit of that vibe with this filly by Scat Daddy.
And it's funny because she debuted at Keeneland in the race that was won by Mean Mary, and we know what she's gone on to do on the racetrack. The 2 races in Kentucky for Great Island so far were very, very strong. And she seems to be a little bit more of a tactical type that's kind of on that upward trajectory. So we'll see how she does today. But I agree with you. I think she's a very interesting player in here.
Definitely. Now on to the 12-horse
I just have
field.
to give a quick
go
pop.
for it.
You can't forget the 3-court return, and I'm surprised you didn't use her at all, as she ran a huge race in the EP Taylor last time out in Grade 1 company. This one for Josie Carroll has had a very good year. I think she's one to take a look at.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
She's come a long way, that horse. I mean, a maiden 40 earlier in her career and was over 40-1 in that EP Taylor, which followed a third. Well beaten, but a third nonetheless in the Canadian. We'll see how good she is. I mean, as far as the American runners, she's catching a pretty salty field. Really solid crew front to back in the Via Borghese. And look, I mean, a perfect dovetail into the main event today, the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector on the dirt. You've got that cast of 12 from inside to out with Lasting Legacy on the rail, and then all the way to the outside with the 12 Mind Control and Johnny V. It does look low that, at least as far as like the pecking order, both Firenze Fire and Diamond Oops need to lead off the discussion. Let's start with Firenze Fire, who's just been such a quality Florida bred throughout his career and scratched a couple of weeks ago because of the wet track and the Cigar Mile.
And both he and Mind Control and actually Majestic Dunhill had been thinking about pointing to the Cigar Mile too. Looks like we'll really benefit from that and getting a chance to see them. But Firenze Fire won the Vosburg, and we've talked about this race a few times as we backtrack. I thought it was a big performance from him and kind of a coming out party, really. And not that he's really done anything wrong. Won the True North, ran just beaten 2 lengths behind Volatile in the Vanderbilt, where it was a very strange pace scenario. A lot of commotion at the starting gate beforehand, too. The downpour and the forego. I think this Vosburg win for Firenze Fire really stamped him as a major contender in this division.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and he's been good for a long time, and I love that he's come back better than ever for trainer Kelly Breen. Absolutely. Big fan as well. I mean, if you like the game, you have to have a soft spot for the 7 Diamond Oops, who just has had this chameleon-like consistency and quality where turf, dirt, long, short, it just doesn't matter with him. He's your defending winner of the Mr. Prospector, and didn't seem from post 11 in that 14-horse Breeders' Cup sprint. It just never seemed like he was in a spot where he could, even in a race like that, get settled or really have a chance to do anything, basically chasing 5 wide while jammed up between horses.
Yeah, he really never had a breather in there, and I think it'll be interesting seeing some of the horses coming out of the Breeders' Cup Sprint and how they fare. His win in the Phoenix, though, 2 starts back, as we take a look at Keeneland, and I just think it's awesome that he won a graded stake on the turf at Churchill, came right back, won a graded stake on the dirt at Keeneland, and this is the in the Phoenix. And I thought this was one of his better performances because it looked to me, Jason, like he wasn't going to get there. And he just kept coming and coming and coming. Nice performance from this horse who's just as cool as they come and as versatile as they come.
So getting away from Firenze Fire and Diamond Oops, and I know we got to get going here. Who else are you looking to? Is Heichel, who's coming back for Todd Pletcher, who's shown little glimpses of talent. In fact, you're definitely looking at him. He's your top pick in this spot. And the fact that Todd sees fit to put this horse off yet another fairly lengthy layoff in a spot like this, and I get, maybe riding or running across a 3 other than allowance race, you don't see them all that often, so maybe they're between a rock and a hard place. But, man, there's a big part of me that says, Todd's very confident to just step up in a race like this off that long layoff.
I thought the same thing until Noble Empire ran yesterday, as that had been his workmate, and he ran really poorly yesterday afternoon. So we'll see how that does go. But I was really intrigued by Heichel as kind of an interesting outsider. And as I mentioned, just quickly, as Mind Control and Sleepy Eyes Todd come out of the Lafayette, unfortunately, there was an incident in that race at the top of the stretch that completely took a lot of horses out of it, Mind Control being one of them. So don't take that Lafayette at face value.
Yeah, we'll see. Looked like a very salty field on paper, though, going in, and that included Fat Man, who I think, if memory serves, came out of that race and was second behind
Third,
Tax,
yeah.
third behind Tax, who, I mean, was in a class of his own last Saturday in the Harlan's Holiday. Speaking of class, there might be a lot of that to go around in this 2-year-old maiden special weight. As you work your way through the field, you've got a number of shippers, 2 horses trying the turf, one of them a first-time starter for Todd Pletcher. Todd with 2 in the last race. I'm biting on the 9 public information, and I get there's not a ton. In fact, there's probably not any immediate turf pedigree in the family, certainly on the female lineage. But if I'm being honest, the Chad Brown and a Rod Ortiz factor won me over on the 9 public information. But a very, very difficult race to close things out in the mandatory rainbow.
It is, and I don't mind into mischief on the turf. That's fine by me. I just wish that he had run a little bit in that dirt debut.
And didn't get bet. Believe me, I saw all that stuff,
for sure.
too.
I took a bit of a price play, the 7 advanced placement, the first, the full brother to admission office, who is very good on the turf, for Brian Lynch as well. He's going to have his running shoes on in this spot, but I'm really intrigued by him from a pedigree standpoint as the center point of entry.
Oh, and Coffee Clicks in the fat mare has been amazing
Fantastic.
For Ammerman Racing. And, that is the final piece of a Rainbow Six puzzle and a fascinating way to close down the card. Let's get on to our lightning round before we turn things over to track announcer Pete Aiello for the scratches and changes. How about Holly Doyle? She's our first order of business, and I got to tell you, even watching or at least following along, even kind of quasi-following along on social media throughout 2020, how often her picture and her name has popped up. And I would love to see her become the BBC Sports Person of the Year for 2020.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, and I got a chance to actually cover British Champions Day this year, where she won her first Group 1, and in fact won 2 races on the day, and it's just amazing. She is so strong, and you watch how just quickly and effectively she moves and what she gets out of her horses, and it's just been an amazing ambassador for the game too. So best of luck to Holly.
Yeah, absolutely. I was happy to see that story and figured it was a must-use here on the lightning round. Now, Mr. Prospector, let's pay some homage and some reverence to a sire of sires. And going back, here he is at Claiborne. This was back, I think, this video taken in the 80s. He was standing at the same time as Danzig was there. So you had Mr. Prospector and Danzig. Neat seeing him in his paddock at Claiborne in Kentucky. Was looking, because he was a Florida bred, actually, and or stood in Florida, rather, and was 7 for 14 throughout his career and had that big 107-4 allowance win at Gulfstream Park in early April of 1973.
I love when we have races named for some of these big horses, and you kind of take a walk through history and look back in time and see how influential they have come and what their legacy has been. I think that's certainly something that can be said for Mr. Prospector.
Absolutely. And let's give some props to Via Borghese as we honor an outstanding, very solid turf filly with her namesake stake that'll go in race number 9. Trained by Angel Penna Jr., and I like seeing the fact that Jose Santos was essentially her regular rider.
And it was great seeing Angel Penna last year in the winner's circle to present the trophy. Of course, you still see him around the racetrack and just a true gentleman in every way. And another one fun looking back on her career, too.
Now, we'll see Trader Jack Sisterson in action this afternoon. He's got a few horses, including Happy Champ, that I think will run very well early on this afternoon. Well, how about him breezing True Timber yesterday morning up at Palm Meadows? Just a pretty slow, very slow, in fact, half mile and 53-2.
Just a maintenance work, as he did win the Cigar Mile. That was the first Grade 1 win for Kendrick Carmouche and the second Grade 1 win for Jack Sisterson. He comes out of that Lafayette, too, and came back to win a Grade 1 on the slop, and pretty cool. We'll get a chance to see him pointing towards the Pegasus World Cup.
Alongside Tiz the Law, who stretched his legs back on Wednesday morning up at Palm Meadows as well for Trader Barkley Tag. Moving on and looking at the stakes calendar, you see the G3 there. Well, our Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint upgraded and elevated a Grade 3 status for 2021. A good move for a race that last year on the Pegasus undercard just had a monstrous field won by Texas Wedge.
And it seems like it always does, as it's a huge field. It's competitive through. You see Peony Price leading the way there. Just the quality of horses that it's continued to attract. So really excited about that. And I think it's definitely a race that it's nice getting it to see it get the respect it deserves, so to speak.
And just thinking about the importance of turf racing and turf sprinters in general over the last decade or so. I mean, they've really come to the forefront, and very much looking forward to that race as a Grade 3 in 2021. And with that, a major announcement here yesterday with First Racing regarding no Lasix in our Gulfstream Park Stakes for the new year.
As has been the case throughout 2020 for no 2-year-olds racing with Lasix, that First will move medication-free in all of the stakes starting on January 1st, 2021. So it will be a medication-free racetrack here in South Florida, Gulfstream Park, the first one in Florida to do it, and a company that's always been at the forefront of putting the safety of horses first.
Well said. Mandatory Rainbow Six this afternoon. The guarantee yesterday was $1.25 million. I'm never any good at predicting these pools, Acacia, but I can guarantee it is going to be massive and gargantuan later on today.
That's one thing we know, as it should be. Good luck. Everything must go.
Everything must go, but not Pete Aiello. We love Pete. We want Pete to stay, and in fact, the news is he's coming up next with those Saturday scratches and changes coming up in just a few seconds.